Have you ever wondered why some people emerge from their darkest moments stronger and more resilient? It's because they've learned to see trauma not just as an obstacle, but as a powerful teacher. We'll uncover how trauma can be a source of incredible personal growth, providing evidence from research and expert insights to support this transformative idea. Now, in order to use trauma to our advantage, we first have to understand trauma. By definition, trauma is the emotional response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event that overwhelm an individual's ability to cope. It can be caused by a wide range of experiences, including accidents, natural disasters, personal losses, or abuse. So the first thing I want to make abundantly clear is the fact that trauma, in a lot of ways, is a subjective experience. There isn't a one-size-fits-all that determines whether an experience for someone is traumatic. That conversation can go into nature versus nurture and the responses they learn from their guardians. Please do not let anyone ever tell you what something counts or doesn't count as trauma just because it doesn't fit their own projected narrative of that word. So trauma can be a bunch of different things, and trauma can manifest in many different forms, including emotional, psychological, or physical. Each type of trauma leaves a mark on a person, but it's how we respond and heal from these experiences that ultimately dictate and can define our future. And trauma doesn't just affect us emotionally, it physically changes our brain. So I want you to imagine your brain as a complex control center, like a computer. Trauma disrupts its normal functioning, but understanding these changes can help us find ways to heal and rebuild. So walk with me here. We're going to take a deep dive into your brain. You have the amygdala, which processes emotions, can become overreactive when we are traumatized. The hippocampus, responsible for memory, can shrink, leading to difficulties in processing and recalling memories, which scientifically explains why a lot of people who are trying to recite a traumatic experience often say they blacked out. The prefrontal cortex, which governs your decision making and self-control, can also be impacted, affecting our ability to think clearly and regulate emotions. And if you've ever experienced some type of trauma, you can probably agree with the fact that that sort of experience stays with you for life. And unfortunately, for a lot of people that are, for a lack of better words, unhealed, it can really affect them for the rest of their life, even in their daily life on a minor scale, because as you just learned, when a traumatic event happens and it changes your brain, from there on out, any type of situation that triggers that same type of emotional response in your body, your brain has already been altered to shelter yourself from that specific situation and can cause you to lash out or defend yourself in a similar way in a fight or flight survival response because your body has been trauma induced in the past. While trauma is undeniably painful, it can also be a catalyst for profound personal growth. And this phenomenon is known as post-traumatic growth, or PTG. It's a theory that suggests that individuals can experience positive change as a result of their struggles with trauma. Research supports the idea of PTG, with studies showing that people who endure and process traumatic experiences often report increased resilience, deeper relationships, and a greater appreciation for life. For example, a study published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress found that survivors of natural disasters often develop a newfound strength and clarity in their lives. PTG is not about denying the pain of trauma, but rather about recognizing that within this pain, there is great room and potential for positive change. And this is something that I heard Joe Dispenza speaking about in a recent podcast. And he's basically talking about the two different environments that us humans tend to be in order to have a big awakening or cathartic change or transformation in their life. So majority of people tend to fall under category 1, which is what this video is talking about. People usually don't feel the need to change or recognize the impact of change in their lives until they reach rock bottom or until they face some sort of really challenging obstacle, whether that's emotionally, physically, mentally, to come into their life. And then they say, oh, okay, wait a second. I'm actually really not happy with myself or my life, or there is no way I can go about my life the same way now that I've had this experience. And that was definitely how I started dipping my toes in this water of wellness. I didn't really have my first big spiritual awakening until COVID time. It was the beginning of COVID. And then obviously since then it's been 4 years, so I can happily say that I've also experienced change from the second category, which is changing from a place of joy and inspiration. And it happens when you're at a place where you have a sense of self, you have an understanding of your identity, and you're grounded and rooted in that knowledge, and you quite simply just want more for yourself, but it's coming from a place of self-love. It's not coming from a place of lack. So I'm definitely a personal testimony to the research that has shown that people who work through their trauma often come out the other side with a deeper sense of purpose and a stronger sense of self. The journey through trauma can often lead to an enriched life filled with new possibilities and deeper connections. I really feel like we're put on this earth to understand ourselves and elevate collective consciousness and be beacons of love and light and share that with others. But we are not able to do that if we also don't have negative energy as well in our lives and in the 3D and on earth. If we didn't understand or feel suffering, then we wouldn't have empathy and compassion for others, and we wouldn't know how to fully love and accept others, because we quite simply would have no experience to relate to them on or connection from our own personal life to draw that back to. Human consciousness is all about making connections and finding patterns and analyzing information. Once again, like a computer code, we're analyzing all these different numbers and codes and letters and turning them into algorithms in our own brain for us to fully understand and comprehend the information that we're receiving. We're turning data into information, right? So without the context of suffering and negativity and trauma, we wouldn't then fully be able to experience true bliss and love and joy. So it's this beautiful duality, like yin and yang. In all lightness, there's still dark, and in all darkness, there is still light. We have both of those energies within, and we need both of them to then fully experience life and also find inner harmony and balance within ourselves so that we can be our highest consciousness and be our best selves in the world. In addition to psychological and scientific perspectives, philosophy and Buddhist teachings offer profound insights into the nature of trauma and growth that I would like to share with you, because these teachings emphasize compassion, oneness, and the transformative power of forgiveness, which is by far the biggest lesson that I have had to learn and have since learned through my most painful traumas. And recent conversations have really reiterated this inner dialogue for me within myself, and I've really recognized this kind of growth within myself when talking about my previous triggers. So in regarding compassion for self and others, Buddhism teaches that compassion, or karuna, is a fundamental virtue. It's not just about feeling pity for others, but also recognizing our shared humanity and extending kindness to everyone, including ourselves. And I feel like there's a really fine line when it comes to compassion and empathy versus pity. I often connect the feeling of pity for others with somebody that has a superiority complex, and ironically, it can be very easy to fall into a spiritual ego when you're on this healing journey. And I was watching a video somewhere where someone was talking about the levels of ascension or phases in a spiritual journey, and I think a spiritual ego was the second level on that list. But when you commit to the practice of humility and humbling yourself in a good way, you'll feel the difference between pityness and compassion for others. Thich Nhat Hanh is a renowned Buddhist monk who often spoke about interbeing and the idea that all life is interconnected. What this principle does is it encourages us to see beyond our pain and recognize that others also suffer, fostering empathy and connection. That is a very easy philosophy applicable to your own trauma when reflecting on a situation where someone may have caused you harm or wrongdoing. Recognizing that you are connected to that person in one way or another, and recognizing that hurt people, I feel like can relieve a lot of self-inflicted burdens you're having on yourself in that situation, because this will bring us to our next point. You can forgive someone while still recognizing that what they did was absolutely wrong, and the proper way to do that is then setting boundaries in your life. So now, to offer some philosophical insights on forgiveness, philosophers like Socrates and Marcus Aurelius have long explored the concept of forgiveness, and they teach us that holding on to anger and resentment only prolongs our own suffering. By forgiving those who have wronged wronged us, we free ourselves from the chains of the past. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning harmful actions. Instead, it's about releasing the hold that those actions have on us, allowing us to move forward with a lighter heart. Because at the end of the day, any kind of suffering in our life is really caused by us. The more that you attach yourself to that suffering and ascribe to that philosophy that in your life you are a victim and that you do suffer and you're a good person that bad things always happen to, you're going to continue to suffer. It is up to you to decide how trauma dictates your life or whether it dictates your life or not. For me, I don't want to be the type of person where my only personality trait is my trauma and my suffering. And I guess a little ironically, it does play a really big part in my life and my personality because I need to talk about it to film videos like this for you. But to me, that's not letting my trauma dictate my life in a negative way. It's a very positive thing. I've learned to turn my trauma into my life purpose, like the PTG studies show. My trauma is the reason why I can move through life with a level of compassion that I didn't know was possible for myself. And because I've found that and because of how great it's made me feel, I choose to share that with you, and I want to share that with you, and I want to help you realize that your dark moments are not the end of the world. The world hasn't stopped spinning. You're still here and you're still breathing. God's not done with you yet, and you can become so much more than the things that have happened to you if you just let yourself have that freedom. If you just let yourself have that space to release yourself from those burn-ins. So to kind of tie those previous two chapters together, we're going to talk about the Buddhist concept of oneness or interconnectedness, which teaches us that we are all a part of a greater whole. And this perspective can be incredibly healing, as I've mentioned before, as it shifts our focus from individual suffering to a collective experience of life. The book I'm reading right now is called Samadhi, The Unity of Consciousness and Existence. And I'm at the chapter right now where it's talking about your chakras and how when you're operating out of your lower chakra centers, which is where most of us operate out of, it's a very conscious way to think about yourself and the world as an individual as separate. When you think about consciousness and existence, you and the world, you and your experiences as separate entities, that thinking all comes from within the body, just the body. When you start to elevate your consciousness and start to focus on your divine being, because your crown chakra is the only one that operates out of a non-hertz frequency. And when you operate out of that chakra and that divinity, you understand that we're all connected. So if you're really committed to deep-rooted healing at the moment, I'm sure you'll realize how your physical body will start to change as you continue to heal yourself, as you start operating more from the higher three frequencies that aren't constantly in conscious survival mode. You'll start to realize this oneness, and you'll start to expand your heart and your mind, have that awareness and openness to your being and to your outlook on life and your traumas. So a lot of the trauma to transformation journey actually comes from moving that trauma out of your body. So like I said, my initial spiritual journey began in 2020. And at that point, the trauma that I was healing wasn't necessarily one specific event that had just happened. It was kind of a buildup of things. So first I needed to do a lot of research because as a fresh spiritual baby, I didn't know much about psychology or philosophy or spirituality. I knew I was interested in it. I had taken a psychology, sociology, and anthropology class in high school. And around that time, I also took world religions, which I found very, very interesting. I loved learning about the different religious perspectives because I realized they all had a few key things in common. But yeah, just lots of research, YouTube essays and documentaries and videos and articles. It started with manifesting, like how to manifest your dream life and affirmations and all that stuff. And then I learned that you can't really manifest things if you have a lot of subconscious blocks and trauma. So that was the next really big thing I had to work through. Lots of shadow work, lots of inner child healing. I spent a lot of time in nature. I did a lot of grounding, which is also a way that you're going to release that trauma through your body. Lots of just like laying barefoot in the grass, lots of dancing. Women especially tend to store a lot of trauma in the hips. So the more that you dance, the more that you're doing things like bachata and salsa and yoga and hip opening stretches, you'll find this deep healing in that. Frog pose is one of my favorites. I've done meditations too where I'm laying down but my feet are in butterfly, and then I'm visualizing the trauma or that stagnant energy moving through my body down to my hips, and then as I exhale, moving down to my feet and into the ground. So for the first 1 to 2, maybe 3 years of my healing journey, that's kind of what I look like. And then I think I've also had a really big spiritual awakening this previous year, and both of these relationships I feel like were kind of teaching me the same lesson, because the universe will keep giving you the same lesson over and over and over again, manifesting in different people in different forms until you learn the lesson. So the first one had kind of started with my really close friend at the time, and then after we had kind of stopped contact, it transitioned into a family relationship and a family dynamic, and that was single-handedly one of the most traumatic experiences that I had to go through. But coming out of it now, I have become such an unrecognizable person in the best way possible, that not that I'm happy that it happened, obviously I never want any version of myself to experience that kind of hurt. I fully recognized how important it was for me to go through that to then become who I am now. And I'm sure I'm going to have a handful of other very severe traumatic events and heartbreaks that send me through the same kind of process. But everything we're kind of talking about in this video are definitely more of the specific lessons that I learned with that second spiritual awakening I'm talking about that I've experienced in the past year, because I realized that if I can find a way to forgive the specific people in my life, then I can do anything. It really gives you this freeing feeling. After these specific events happened, I was really adamant on starting therapy, which I did, and that was something that I had wanted to do before, because I thought it would be probably very beneficial, but just never had the push, let's say, to do it. And I think I'm the first person in my family to go to therapy. And quick pause, shout out to everyone watching this video that's breaking generational curses. If you were put on this earth to break generational curses and traumas, it's not an easy job. I'm the eldest daughter, and if you're an eldest daughter, I'm sure you know these are all things a part of my life path. I started therapy because although up until that point I had a lot of good coping mechanisms and skills and habits in place to help me get through the situation, but it was really challenging for me to navigate what kind of relationship I would have with these people in my life, because up until that point my way of healing had involved cutting people out cold. And this is kind of like where I feel like my spiritual ego kind of came in. I was like, I have no room for anyone in my life who's not healed or not on my level. And when you're dealing with family members, obviously that's not realistic and can always happen. So I had to kind of find a way to have a relationship with these people where I wasn't cutting them off completely, but I also wasn't harming myself. So anyway, therapy really, really helped me have a clear mind, because I'm still young and obviously I'm learning every day. In these certain situations, I almost felt crazy because I was being told that I was the one acting out or wrong, or that basically my traumas weren't valid and that I had no reason to feel the way I did. When you have that commentary in your ear, obviously it's not helpful in the slightest, and it makes you go crazy. Like, do I even have a right to feel this way? Why do I feel this way? I know I'm hurt. I know I'm being harmed, but like this person's telling me that I don't have a right to feel that way. And then you get kind of angry, like, who are you to tell me that I can't feel that way? So in therapy, that was kind of like the really big thing I wanted to solve. Like, how do I now go about my life after being harmed in this way and being triggered by these people? And side note, I genuinely looked forward to therapy every week. It was such a fun time for me because I love having these kinds of conversations, obviously, like I'm doing right now, but being able to talk about my viewpoint on these situations in a safe space was really, really healing for me. And I don't mean to say this in an ego boost kind of way, because it genuinely did help me, but there was nothing that my therapist told me that I didn't already know. And I think that she was surprised or really enjoyed me as a client because I already had this background of self-awareness and emotional intelligence and maturity, and just like an understanding of different childhood trauma patterns, and patterns of a narcissist, and patterns of a manipulator, and patterns of a toxic behavior, and all these different things that she would recognize for her clients and be like, okay, so this person is acting in this way and is presenting this behavior. This is how you deal with it. Even though I had already known this information a priori, then you can kind of get confused with like, oh, am I just saying that because it's feeding my own ego, or is this really true? And you know what I mean? So sitting down with her and explaining where I was coming from and the steps that I took and why, and telling her about the patterns I recognized, and her being like, you were absolutely correct. This is exactly what I would have told you to do, or I agree with your analysis of the situation and these people. It took away my sense of crazy from my life, and that ultimately was the first step I needed to then be able to heal, because now that I can accept the situation for what it is and feel okay with the way I handled it and where these people are coming from, I can move on from there. A few of the different points we talked about in therapy, which are, I think, important to this video. One was how I already knew this, I already knew that I did this, was where I kind of always expected people to be at my level or on their best behavior, or I expected a sense of perfection in people. And it was never from a bad place. Where my trauma response kind of comes in is like, I want the best for everybody, and I have my own projected idea of what that looks like for them. So when they don't live up to that, I'm then like, oh, you're not healed, you're not on the path that I think you should be. So it causes a rift in that relationship because of my own predetermined expectations of them. So I've run into a lot of conflict with people because I expect them to be essentially somebody they're not. I just see potential in them, right? The next thing is that you have to understand that nobody that is evil or a villain sees themselves as a villain. They always think they're doing the right thing. So you have to understand the narrative that's being played in their mind versus your mind. So we're going to flip the script a little bit. Think of the mentality of the person that caused you trauma. They are not the villain. They're the victim. There is no room for you to also then be the victim in their mind, because you guys have conflicting beliefs and ideas, right? And any person that is somehow involved in this circle is going to be categorized as a supporter or also an enemy in their eyes, based on if they are agreeing with that person or disagreeing with that person. Hurt people who hurt people often have the mentality of like, you're either with me or you're against me. There's no in between. And that was something my therapist made very clear. Most people tend to think in this like black and white way of like, we're either best friends or enemies, and they don't usually see things in this like middle gray area, which is where the solution usually lies. So I was in therapy to look for that gray area, but I also had to recognize the solution I was looking for. My gray area involved a relationship with somebody that wasn't seeing things from a gray area. They were seeing things in black and white. So that's another thing when it comes to trauma. You can't change anybody's mind. And when you're somebody that is spiritual, obviously you want the best for people, and obviously you want them to heal and grow, but you cannot force somebody onto that journey if they're not ready. And that's something I especially recognize now, and that's something that I obviously have learned since then. I want to help as many people as I can. This is something that makes me feel so fulfilled, and this is something that really affirms my sense of self and purpose. But I know that I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. My hardest pill to swallow was me not being for these certain people in my life. Having to accept the fact that the people that theoretically should want to grow with me and support me and accept me and hold space for these big emotions and the hurt that I'm feeling simply don't, even though I also want them to come up with me to the top, and I want them to heal, and I want them to be the best versions of themselves. Don't. It was so hard for me, because now to flip it back to me, it's like I'm the hero in my own eyes, right? And I'm looking at all these people as people that need to be saved, and it's my job to save them. So when they don't listen to me, or they don't recognize the hurt that they're causing me, but they don't have to cause me, it's only to my own detriment. But in forgiveness and letting go, I recognize, oh, okay, actually, it's not my job to fix you, and you don't have to be what I expect you to be to have a relationship with you, because I'm the one committed to my own healing journey. As a divine conscious being with the soul, I recognize that we all have our own soul path and soul journey and our own divine timing, and we're all connected, right? It's not your job to come correct so I don't get triggered. It's my job to meet you where you are without any expectations, and make sure I'm grounded in myself, rooted in myself, so that I don't get triggered by you. And this is a great analogy, an example as to why trauma is so subjective. Somebody could write a comment on this YouTube video telling me that I'm, I don't know, stupid or silly, or I have no idea what I'm talking about, or make some kind of comment on my appearance. And that would have no effect on me simply because I have a very strong sense of self. I have a very strong sense of confidence. I'm confident in who I am. I'm confident in the way I look. I'm constantly taking actions to improve myself and make myself better and more beautiful, more magnetic inside and out. So things like that don't bother me. I know it's a projection of them. I know they're clearly not happy with themselves, and I can look at that comment and send them love and be okay. But if I was not confident in my appearance, or if I was not confident in what I was saying to you in this video, something like that would really bother me. And this is the analogy my therapist gave. It's like I had a person in this situation in my life poking me. It's like poking the bear. They're poking my skin, saying things that are bothering me, but it's only bothering me because I have a bruise there. If my skin was healed, their pokes would not bother me. It'd just be like annoying, you know? Like I would just be like, oh, okay, and move on. But because I had a bruise there, they hurt me more deeply. For somebody that's committing to healing themselves from trauma, it's your job to heal the bruise, not to stop the person from poking you, because that's just not realistic. You're never going to live a perfect life where everyone's perfect and no one's bothering you or no one's doing things that are annoying or trigger you or whatever, right? It's just a matter of you healing yourself from the trauma as best as you can so that when you're faced with these triggers, it doesn't affect you in the same way. Your brain's not going into the survival mode and chemically altering your brain. You know what I mean? So what have we learned so far? Trauma is undeniably challenging, but it also offers us an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to connect on a deeper level. By integrating these insights from psychology, philosophy, and Buddhism, we can transform our pain into a powerful teacher. Our trauma is our personal power, and I firmly believe that. So I encourage you to explore these teachings and see how they resonate with your own experiences as best as you can. Be curious and open-minded. When it comes to fear or really deep emotions, we can stray away very easily because they're uncomfortable, but it's all up to you and the way you look at it. So if you just make that one simple switch from caution to curiosity, it can really help you ease into that healing. Just be curious about your feelings. Why do I feel this way? What might have happened in my life for me to feel this way? Is there certain lessons I can take away from this experience to help me grow, to be a better person? Is there certain ways this is now coming up in my life? Coming into it with this open-minded curiosity is going to be the way that you fully understand yourself, the situation, and how these teachings can resonate with you. So here are 5 tips for using trauma as a teacher. The first one is going to be seeking support. If you couldn't tell already, I firmly believe that therapy is an important outlet for healing. Honestly, I think everyone needs therapy. Definitely do your research. It can be a costly thing to upkeep, but investing in yourself is the best form of investment. So if you can find something that's comfortable for you, I highly encourage you to spend your money on therapy. It's very, very important. And I hope as the years go on, therapy becomes less of a taboo thing or has less stigma around it. And that was definitely something I had to work through as well. And you never know who you could help by going to therapy. Because I've gone to therapy, I know a lot of people that felt more comfortable and open with the idea of going to therapy or did go to therapy because they heard I went to therapy. Next is mindfulness and meditation. I still meditate every day in some kind of form. I will say I'm not doing it in the same way I did it when I first started, but I think that's a good thing. And that's kind of ultimately what meditation is. It's training your brain and your body to become one and present and still, even in the most chaotic moments. Meditation is the reason why I find myself to be a lot more present and intuitive and feeling, and the reason why I'm a lot more calm and receptive and open-minded. I don't lash out like ever. I don't get triggered by a lot of the things that used to trigger me. And a lot of this has to do with the little things that throw you off during the day. For example, being in traffic and being late to something. Once you've meditated for long enough, you're able to train your mind to get into that meditative state during moments where you would usually be triggered or lash out. Obviously, that's very important when it comes to trauma, because usually trauma shows up again in our lives in those day-to-day things. So to reiterate this example, you could have had a really big big trauma as a kid, and then something as small as a YouTube comment really triggers you again because of that. But when you are mindful and you meditate, you can learn to reel yourself back in from constantly living in your body, constantly being in your body and thinking of memories of the past, and moving into the present moment where you can cultivate your highest visions of the future. The next one is something I really recognize to be my new trauma teacher, and that's creative expression. There are so many ways to express your emotions. Like I said, dancing, grounding, being outside, all those things, but specifically through art. Think of writing, poetry, music, painting, or drawing. So two of the really impactful creative expression outlets that have really helped me turn my traumas into teachers specifically this year are definitely singing. I love to sing. And growing up, I never allowed myself to sing. This was also some trauma I needed to work through specifically when it came to singing. But singing was like my biggest fear for the long time. And I grew up being like a really big perfectionist. So if I wasn't perfect at something or really good at something, I just didn't do it, period, because the thought of not being perfect at something really scared me. And being the best at certain things were some of the only times I felt loved or appreciated or proud. My point is that's kind of like where my headspace was. So I didn't sing all these years of my life growing up because of that conditioning that I had put on myself. Anyway, the universe was like, no, babe, you need to sing. So I'll never forget. I was in grade 11. It was during COVID, during my initial healing time. And I was in French class, online school, and I had the best teacher ever. I still think about her. She was very spiritually wise and just like a really beautiful, emotionally aware woman, and just wanted to spread her wisdom with the world. For our final big project, she made us sing a French song in front of the Zoom of like 50 kids. I had to sing for the first time almost in my whole life since I was like really little, before I understood what it felt like to be judged. So I had to do an oral presentation before the singing. I literally remember saying this presentation and like I was uncontrollably shaking and my voice was shaking. You could hear it in my voice, and I had to sing the song after. And like that was one of the scariest moments of my life. I've never been so scared, and I'm not a scared person. I never really had any fears or big fears. That was the scaredest I've ever been in my whole entire life. And I remember her saying after, oh, it didn't really sound like you practiced the oral. And I had to write her an email after being like, no, I did. I practiced for hours and hours and hours. I was just so nervous to sing. My voice cracked up, but I'll never forget that moment in the best way because I've always loved to sing. I always loved to sing and dance, and I never let myself sing. I robbed myself of so many years of just pure love and joy for singing because of my own fear. So after that class, I even had a few classmates message me after being like, oh, do you sing? You sounded really good. And I was like, no. Obviously, they had no idea where I was coming from, but just those messages encouraging me, because I had obviously explained after, like, I want to sing, I like to sing, but I never sing. I was so scared. And then being like, oh no, like you were really good. This is something you should definitely consider practicing or doing more if this is something you want to do. Ever since then, I have slowly but surely gained my confidence to sing more and more, and improved. Singing now is one of my favorite outlets. I can sing in front of my family now. I sing with my friends now. For one summer, I did like a golf course hostess server job. So I used to sing for the golf course members with a friend of mine who also sang. So all these little things really helped me gain my confidence to sing. But now it's such an important part of who I am. Singing is a really healing way for me to just let out my emotions. And the second thing I do is lots of journaling, but specifically at the art gallery. This is like my favorite solo date that I've curated with myself. I go to school downtown, so it's really easy for me to get there. It's like 10-minute walk from my campus, and I'll pick a room that I intuitively feel called to that day, and I'll literally just sit down and write. I have no topic, no expectations of what I write. I just sit down and write, and I get in such a beautiful state of being. That's one of the most present meditative activities for me to do that really send me into that flow state. I get so present with what I'm doing. I put on classical music. I'm surrounded by these beautiful paintings. I'm people watching, and I'm just writing, and it's truly the most beautiful feeling experience. I really do wish I could share that with you. I wish everyone could feel that feeling. In addition to that, I've just found such a love for art, paintings in general. Over the past year, I had the privilege of traveling to Greece and Italy and Scotland and Ireland last summer. So I really got exposed to a lot of art. I went to New York in January and I just really recognized there how much I love art. Really try my best to be so present with what I was looking at and where I was when I was away. And through that meditative state of being, I really realized how much I love art and how deep the conversation of art can be taken. Art is everything I enjoy. It's beauty, it's history, it's philosophy, it's storytelling. And I never really realized how art is really like the cultivation of all those things. So when I finally recognized that, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to learn everything I can about art. I want to be exposed to as much art and culture as possible. So now I've really done my best to do that, and I continue to do that. And I spend my free time watching YouTube documentaries on different Renaissance artists and really nerdy topics in the Roman Empire. And I love it. I've also started taking up coloring again. I had this beautiful coloring book, but I lost it and I just got a new one. It's Bridgerton themed. Any and every creative outlet and way you can creatively express yourself is so important. It's so important for healing your inner child, which is the version of you that experienced a lot of the trauma that we talked about today. It's really important for you to connect with that version of yourself because they're still within you and they ultimately dictate a lot of the decisions you make in your life. So if you can heal her and do the things that make her feel seen and heard and special and loved, that will do more for you than you ever know. Next is physical activity, but I think mindful movement is my favorite way to describe it, is the best, because you can go to a gym. I don't mean to be stereotypical or generalize anyone, but the best example I have of this, and I say this as a gym rat, the heavy gym rat goers, it's usually like a very toxic, masculine presenting man or wounded feminine who go to the gym because they're not happy with themselves. And then once they achieve this crazy physique because of all of these different borderline eating disorder habits and excessive training and burnout, they're still not happy with themselves. And then these are usually the people that are also the most toxic and harmful online, posting all these like really cringy, toxic, heartbroken videos. I don't want to make fun of anyone. I can see these videos in my head. I'm sure you've also seen them as well. Or they're leaving really harmful hate comments on people that may not have the same physique as them, but are actively happy and training in the gym and promoting healthy lifestyle and like self-love and all this stuff. And they're like just body shame them. These people are using the gym to heal their root issues that no physical activity can heal. The tips that I'm telling you are all great for aiding in the process of healing, but it's not until you do things like therapy or shadow work or meditating or journaling, like really coming face to face with your subconscious, that you're going to heal these things. So these people have really deep rooted body image issues and childhood trauma, maybe a mother wound, like emotional neglect. Becoming a gym bro is not going to solve your problems. So if you do want to get into physical activity, and this is another thing that's really been a shift in my life this year, I really dialed back on weightlifting. I'm doing so much hot yoga, which is the most amazing, addictive mental, physical, spiritual detox I can ever recommend. The combination of physically releasing and detoxing your body through the sweat and the deep ujjayi breath and the meditation at the end and the sound healing they put on, and then also obviously the intentional yoga movements. There's a lot of heart opening, there's a lot of hip opening. You're strengthening the body while you're softening the mind. Like, this is really what true yoga and mindfulness and meditation is about. Try a physical activity that is going to release tension in the body. And then finally, it's journaling. There are many reasons why journaling is beneficial for you, but the reason why I want to suggest it is to reflect on experiences and track progress. So there are many shadow work journal prompts that are beneficial for healing your trauma and turning them into teachings, but also keeping a journal where you can jot down your mood throughout the day and different experiences that you've had, where you can keep yourself in check. So to bring up this traffic car example again, if you notice that you got triggered, write down, today at blank time, I got triggered by being stuck in traffic and being late. These are the feelings that I felt. And then take some time when you have free time to reflect on that and be like, okay, this is when I got triggered. What is it about this situation that triggers me? And what is the root cause of that trigger? Like, what traumatic event has occurred that tells me I need to be super stressed in a situation where I'm running late, or I need to be be super stressed about time, or I need to be super stressed about people on the road, or who around me has high anxiety about time, who around me has high anxiety about driving. It might not even be a traumatic event that you've faced. It might be you absorbing the trauma of your mother or your sister. For example, like if you have a cousin or a nan or an aunt that doesn't like to drive on the highway, it makes them too nervous. Subconsciously, you might have absorbed that conditioning, and then whenever you drive on the highway, you unconsciously are going into it with that mentality. So that's why it's important to journal. One, for the healing and the releasing and the forgiveness and the letting go of your traumas and your triggers, but also to then recognize all the little ways that that trauma is creeping up on you as you continue to heal and let go. So those are all the ways that I've used my trauma to teach me lessons such as resilience, empathy, compassion, self-awareness, strength, and courage. I am continuously shocked and proud of the person that I've become. Like I said, I've become in a lot of ways a person that I never expected to be. My camera's gonna die. That's really helpful. My apologies, guys. I'm sorry. I know this is not helpful, but my camera just died and I wanted to continue my thought because we're almost at the end. What was I saying? I don't remember. Basically, I kept a lot of my deep feelings to myself because I didn't feel like I didn't want to be a burden to anyone else. I was the one that had to deal with everyone else's problems. I couldn't ever, feel sad or feel hurt or whatever. I always had to be the strong one, or I was always the strong one. So I didn't feel that way. I didn't need to be treated with sympathy or empathy or sensitivity. And now I have become such, in comparison to what I used to be, a sensitive person. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, it shocks me because I never used to be that way. I just noticed myself being more outwardly emotional. I'm a more feeling person now. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't think emotions are a sign of weakness at all. Obviously, it's vulnerable to be emotional, but I don't think it's weakness. I think people that are overly logical or don't recognize their emotions are actually quite unaware of themselves. They lack this sense of self-awareness and they lack this sense of emotional intelligence because it's about finding balance, right? Like anything in life, you have your logical mind, you have your consciousness, and you have your unconsciousness, and you have feelings. You're human. That's part of this journey. It's learning how to cultivate your emotions with your logical mind. So I think that people that actively choose to neglect that side of them have some healing to do. They have some work to do, and hopefully one day they can have a sense of confidence to come to terms with their emotions and accept their feelings, because even though they choose to consciously not incorporate their emotions into their lives and their decisions, unconsciously they're playing a role in who they are. They have trauma that's made them feel like they have to be cold and not be expressive or show emotion. And I think that's quite sad. And this is where I have compassion for them. Compassion is such a big word, but it's the most important part of this spiritual journey. Having compassion for yourself, which then by default an extension to having compassions for those other people, because everything's connected. You are them, they are you. Everything is one. Being able to find compassion for the people that have caused me the deepest amount of hurt and harm has made it really easy for me to have compassion with myself and for little things and for others. And that's such a beautiful, wonderful skill to have, because you learn that you're in control of your life and nobody can harm you unless you let them. One final thing I wanted to talk about, because it has to do with compassion and leading with love and this softer energy, but I ultimately want to make another video on this. It's about giving to give without expectation. So the same way I used to have expectations on other people and how they need to behave because that serves my narrative in a certain way and that benefits me in a certain way, I now do my best to give truly from a place of love without expectation. I extend an arm to people, and I've done this with the people that did me wrong as a part of finding this gray area and boundaries of like, hey, I'm gonna do something nice for you because I genuinely want to. I don't expect anything from you in return. I just want you to have this. I just want you to hear this, and not expect anything in return, not expect them to show up in any sort of way. Just giving because it's a part of my healing, because it's a part of my release and letting go over this power that they've had, over the power that this trauma's had in my life. So some people might classify that as being the bigger person, but when you come from it with this perspective, you don't look at yourself as the bigger person in a sense, because you see yourself as equal to them. So it's just about giving because it makes me feel good to give. I have compassion for you, I have love for you, and I let go to these burdens that have only caused me suffering. So therefore I can do this for you without expectations or baggage or burden. So that might also be beneficial too. One of the ways I did that was I wrote a letter and I basically said everything that I didn't get to say say, or all the ways that I felt, or all the things that I wanted to release, all the things that were still in my conscious about this certain traumatic event for me. And I just wrote it all out. And then whether you send it or not doesn't matter. You can send it to them, or you can burn it, do like a fire releasing ritual. Just the act of writing it, that was really what's important. All in all, find your boundaries, find your outlets that are going to help you turn these traumas into teachers, and realize that there is room in trauma for you to grow. PTG, babe. I hope you enjoyed this video. It felt really good to make. I know we talked about a lot of heavy things, but I really hope that it helps you see the light at the end of the tunnel. For me, this is my light at the end of the tunnel. It was just 11:11 on my clock. So I'm really, really thankful for you for watching. I'm really thankful that you are open to hearing about this and having this conversation with me. I'm really thankful to God, the universe. I'm really thankful for my family, my support system, my mom. I'm just full of love. Oh, I feel really warm and sappy now. If you like videos like this, make sure to subscribe. I have so much more coming on my channel. My heart feels so much more open now. Oh, you know what we're gonna do? Hold on. I'm gonna send you off with a sound bowl. This is my heart chakra sound bowl. I love you. Thank you for watching. And as always, I will see you in the next one. It's easier on the floor, but I'm trying.